Okay, so now I'm lined up on my bearing center hole, and we're going to just do my bearing pocket. I want to do this before I do the sides because the sides aren't critical. This is actually the critical part. It's 11 millimeters deep. So we'll set up our DRO, and the center section here is actually needs to be about 12 to 13 millimeters, just in case the shaft goes through here and sticks out a little bit. So what I'm going to do first is just do a center drill, and then I'm going to do a series of holes until I get to my biggest drill bit, which unfortunately happens to be only a 1/2 inch. And then we will open that up to get to our 35 millimeters using a boring bar. Just take your time, and it'll turn out just right. Okay, so I'm gonna zero my DRO right here and make sure that it is on metric, which it is. One thing I want to point out too is I've got my X and Y locked down so that it doesn't move once we start. Alright, let me change this bit out and get a bigger one. Okay, that's 7/16, and I'll move up to a 1/2 inch. Okay, so I've removed the drill chuck, and I'm going to put in my boring bar, and I've just got it stuck in the center hole here, and this bit should give me a hole that's just a little bit wider than this 1/2 inch, and that's what I'm going to start with. This is how you would open it up and spread this out. This is where you lock the bit down, and this is where you lock the gibs down. So let me get this all set up, get it in there, and then we'll start widening the bearing hole. Okay, so I've got my boring bar in here. I've got it zeroed out to the top of the stock here. And the first hole we're going to concentrate on is this center hole. And if you remember, that is 16 millimeters, and it's about 13 millimeters deep. We're going to go about 12. I think 12 will be enough to give us, that's just for the relief for the end of the shaft in case it goes through the bearing slightly. I don't know exactly what size this is, so we're going to start it up. We're going to go a little bit and we'll measure. I do know that that was close to a 1/2 inch, but these dimensions aren't really critical. That's about 14 millimeters, maybe 15. So we'll go on all the way down to the depth, and then we'll slide this over and open it up a little bit. That's 12 millimeters. Now I'm going to widen this. And I'm going to make this adjustment, open this up a little bit, and do it again until we get our 16 millimeter. Okay, so what I did now was I loosened up my gibs, and I'm just going to turn this out just slightly. There's a little dial on the side of the boring bar set, and I'm just going to turn it out and go down a little deeper. I need to go about another millimeter. In the other direction. My bad. Okay, there we go. Okay. Then I'll tighten up the gibs once again, so it doesn't move and kind of locks it in place. And then I'll work my way down with the boring bar and take care of this. Okay, hopefully we're close to 16. It's not really critical, it's just a relief for the shaft as if it happens to go through. Okay, that's just a little over 16 it looks like, but that'll be good. Okay, so what I want to do now is just continue to open this up until I get to 35 millimeters. But now I'm only going 10 millimeters deep. Maybe a little over 10 millimeters, but 10 millimeters will get my bearing flush. So I'm just going to just keep working this open until I get bearing to fit into the pocket. And then I turn it off before I lift it back up, otherwise it scores the inside of the wall here, and I don't want that. I want it to be as smooth as possible. Measure every time. Okay, we're 31.29. So I'm going about one rotation every time, and that's about another millimeter. So the next one should be around 32, 30. So I've got about 2 more to get it to 35. And we just go again. All right, I'm going to do a couple more passes and I'm coming back and measure it, and we should be really close to 35. Okay, we're right at 34 millimeters, 34.09, and I've made my final adjustment here, and I only went about halfway this time, and I'm just going to take a little bit at a time and just keep bumping it until I get the bearing just to drop right in. It's really close. Let's see what the calipers measure. These are really not that accurate measuring like this with the bit in there and all, but okay, it looks like 34.77. So I'm just gonna ever so slightly maybe go not quite a quarter of a turn here. Ever so slightly. Okay. Okay, it went down just a little bit. You only get one shot at this. That may be right there, might be just right. So let me just go on through. Much out of there as I possibly can. Feels really good. Okay. Man, it's close. Very close. All right. The bearing is dead on 35. See what this is. Keep saying 34.77. Okay. All right, 34.82. I need to tweak it just a little bit. Just a little bit more. Just keep taking little small increments because you don't want it to be too big. You can always take more out, but you can't put it back once it's gone. So. Ever so slight. Okay. That's going to slide right in there. There we go. Perfect. Okay, it's sticking up a little bit. So I'm going to go a little bit deeper and get it flush. Okay, so I've got my bearing pocket finished. I don't know if you can tell, but there's a little recess there in the center, and that's just so that if once my shaft goes through the bearing, if it sticks out a little bit, it has a little room there and it doesn't rub. And I just want to get that just so it slides in. Doesn't need to be super tight, and it doesn't need to be, you don't want it loose. And I've got it just below the surface there. Okay, so now all we need to do is just lay out for our corners and machine that off. And this mount is pretty much done. So let me get that laid out. Okay, so I've put my ER32 collet back in the mill, and I've just got a 1/2 inch end mill. I've marked where my lines are going to be. Now I'm going to go and take a porter band saw, and I'm just going to clip these corners off. And then I'm going to try to figure out how to stand this up in the mill and get it fairly level, and clamp it, and then just machine that off. Now if you've got a vise that you can rotate to whatever angle this is, then you can come at it from the side and set the angle. But you work with what you have. So let me clip these corners off. We'll get it mounted up and we'll start finishing up these corners. Okay, so I've clipped, you can see that I've clipped my corners off, and I just took a little protractor I got here, nothing fancy, and I just checked to see what the angle that was. It was about 34 degrees. Okay, it looks pretty good. Nice and smooth. And looks like it's on my line there. So that's good. I'm going to flip it over. I'm going to do the other side. Alright, well, I stuck it on here just to do a test fit. I just hit this with some sandpaper. It doesn't have to be real fancy. You could fly cut this if you wanted to, but I just, again, just hit it with some sandpaper, and then of course I put my little logo on there. You can see that we're clearing the gibs here, which is actually right up there in that corner. And you can see we're going to clear that there. So this right here will actually go all the way up against this, and that will give us this much more of travel right here over the stock, which will give us about 3 inches hopefully total. Just as a note here, I don't know if you can see this. This is my stock screw, but you can see that pretty much is in the same factory spot that it was before. It lines up pretty much right in the center of our bearing mount that we put in. So that ought to be good. Okay, so that wraps up our floated in bearing block. Hey, if you liked the video, give me a thumbs up. Please subscribe to the YouTube channel by clicking on the button below. Thanks for watching, and most importantly, be safe.